we are more likely doing more of the work that we like to do and helping each other, and at the same time we're sharing fixed costs so that we all come out ahead.
Seems like a pretty reasonable way to do it. So, moving forward, do you have an exit strategy for getting out of your business?
I keep a suitcase with a couple of fake passports and a lot of coin under my bed.
Now I know which house to go kick the door in when I'm having a bad day.
Yeah, no, as far as an exit strategy goes, the sale of a law practice is not impossible, but it's difficult.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it doesn't happen very often, and it usually happens between partners.
Right, and it's very highly regulated, and frankly, clients always have the opportunity to go with whom they wish. I do a lot of employment agreements, non-compete, non-solicitation, non-disclosure, that type of thing, and those don't hold up exactly in the legal business. The client is always free to choose with whom they would like to. The default is that they'll stay with the current firm, but they are free to go with their attorney.
It's a relationship business.
Yes. So, and it's a service business, and so it's not like I build up inventory that's going to have residual value when I sell.
Not stacking clients in the barn.
Yeah, I can't, like I said, I can't say that there wouldn't be any value in some sort of a merger or buyout or something like that, but for the legal business it'd be difficult. Now in contrast, some of the other businesses that I am a partner in or that I've worked with, that's a much easier sell.
Mm-hmm.
And in fact, years ago, my sister Elizabeth Pirsch, who was just a great mentor for me. Elizabeth Pirsch was law review, and she clerked for the Chief Justice of the Nebraska Supreme Court and got her master's in tax law. So she was really instrumental in the way that I thought about creating business and doing business. And one of the things she told me when I was still a child was, if you create a business and you are not creating something of value to sell later, all you have done is bought yourself a job. And it is, from an hourly wage standpoint, generally a pretty poor paying job, at least when you start your new business.
Yeah.
So the only reason, as she said, to start a new business or to do a business is to sell it or to franchise it. And that's part of the reason why, as much as I enjoy practicing law and as much as I enjoy helping people, that is not my only thing that I do. I am trying to create other things of real value. And then also, it's not the only thing I do in the sense that obviously I lose money on the animal rescue, but then I have an adjunct professorship coming up at a university.
Nice.
And so you have to balance what you have to do, I think, with the things that you enjoy and help keep you sane.
I agree. Otherwise you burn out, you fall apart, and you're no good to anybody at that point. So one of my favorite questions that I like to ask every one of you that sits down in that chair. So I'm assuming you drove here.
Yes.
So if you're on your way to your next appointment when you leave here, or you're driving somewhere and a dump truck slams into your car and puts you out of business for 6 months, a year, or kills you, what happens to your business?
I have in place, and this again is part of the legal profession, I have in place an agreement with another practitioner that if anything happened to me and I was disabled, she would step in to assist my clients either directly or indirectly in getting them to the people that they would need to succeed.
Okay.
And then something else that's kind of unique to the practice of law is while I do receive fees for my clients, contingent fee, or I shouldn't call them contingent, forgive me, retainer fees, client trust fees, they actually go into my client trust account,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't take them out unless they're earned. And so, again, that is for the protection of me and the client as well in the event that something should happen. I oftentimes talk to my clients when they get started in business about having insurance on key members of the business. And so keep in mind, I have a fiance now, but I have no children to my knowledge, and the fiance is a relatively new thing. So I haven't maybe done what I need to do as far as having in place disability compensation insurance or long-term care insurance or something like that would help protect me. But I'd like to think that if a dump truck slams into me, I'm going to have one great lawsuit against the driver and the company for the dump truck.
Well, that is the perk of being a lawyer. So it's required in law firms and stuff like that, like you said. Do you think it should be an integral part of most business owners planning to have a catastrophe file on hand?
Yeah, and in fact, I kind of play a surrogate role as the attorney of also being a risk manager and counselor for my clients, and we discuss those types of things regularly, and it's very common for me to refer people to insurance providers, and frankly, a lot of these things might even be a deduction for the business prior to distributions to the owner.
Okay. So now I've got a good chunk of questions that when people found out that I was going to be sitting down next to a lawyer, that they posted up and said, hey, could you please ask?
Oh, great.
So these are the fun ones. So do you have a mentor in business, a business mentor? Do you use a mentor?
I do, and as much as I try and be a good educator and good steward for my clients, the great thing about business law is that I meet so many extraordinary entrepreneurs and business people that I have learned from. And I mentioned your partner at No Coast Business Advisors, Jeff Ducharme, has been just a great friend and mentor to me, but he's one of probably 24. I guess I mentioned my sister too, Elizabeth Pirsch. My brother's an attorney. He gives me unsolicited advice constantly.
I'm going to tell Pete you said that.
Oh, it's not going to come as a surprise to him, believe me.
So, when you were picking your mentors, how'd you go about finding the good ones? How'd you decide that this is someone whose advice you should be listening to?
One of the mistakes I think that we make in society is because, and I'll pick on Michael Jordan for an example, because he was such an extraordinary basketball player. LeBron James is the only person I've ever heard compared to him as far as his abilities. And did the Bulls have like 5 championships? I can't remember how many are back to back. Michael Jordan was just an extraordinary basketball player. If somebody told me, Perry, who should I learn basketball from? I don't know that I would say Michael Jordan. He's an incredibly gifted athlete, and he's 6'10", and he's got the ability to jump like almost nobody. And he can't teach you that. That is innate genetics. So as much as I think it's great for kids to watch Michael Jordan play and be inspired by him, I don't know that I would want my kid taught by him. And years ago, I remember people saying that that Michael Jordan was not necessarily a good role model because he gambled. Apparently playing golf or something, I can't recall the specifics. But again, one of the mistakes that people make is that they are looking for one person to be their role model for everything. And you don't need that. There are so many wonderful people that you can learn from, and the truth is that you can learn from a bad example as much as a good example. And if you get stuck in a paradigm, you're going to find that it doesn't always work when there are new forces at play. If you look at the biggest businesses from the turn of the century, 1800, the top 100 capitalized businesses, how many of them were there at 1900? And at 1900, if you did the same thing, how many of them are there in 2000? Look at who's created wealth in the last, 3 decades. I concede Apple and Microsoft have been really big players for a long time, but look at what Amazon has accomplished in a fairly short time from somebody selling books out of their garage. And had you approached me 20 years ago and said, hey, this guy's got this great idea to sell online books in his garage, can I put you down for $50? I'd have been like, boy, that sounds like a horrible idea.
Yeah, some things just don't track well when they're happening.
Yeah, so you can learn a little bit from everybody, and there are special people, obviously, that you can get a lot from, but take the best of what everybody has to offer and learn from the worst of what you've seen, and then you have to do something really difficult, which is to integrate it to your own unique particular skill sets and your own vision for your future and your own perception of unmet need in the marketplace.
Yep. And I say it a lot. You can read all the books, you can listen to all the blogs, you can watch all the video content like this. You can be a theorist about all this stuff that we do. But if you never put it to use, you never put it to practice, it will never do you any good. So another question that's popped up a lot. People have a lot of confusion and questions about like corporate business structure. Like, what's the difference between a C Corp, an S Corp, an LLC, a sole proprietorship, a partnership, a limited partnership? And that's a huge discussion to have. But the one they always ask, the one I always see is what kind of structure, or even what kind of couple of structures should they be looking at when they are planning on getting into business? And I know my usual response is, for the love of God, don't be a sole proprietor. Just because I don't think any business, and this is my personal opinion, not my legal advice, I don't think I think it behooves us as people that have families and people that depend on us not to open our personal liability to what our business does that much. I always think it, and I've heard it referred to as the corporate veil. You should always try to put some kind of corporate veil between your business's activities and your personal assets. So if you had to pick a couple of different corporate entities, or if you just wanted a brief tour of the palette of corporate entities, because this has been a big one, and it's probably, out of everything I've got, this is probably the most asked legal question I see on a daily basis in tons of groups of business owners.
You know what? Hell, we should have started with this one.
Nope, I like making everybody wait till the end of the video to get the really good stuff. It keeps my listeners watching.
You do not need to file anything with the State Corporation Commission, the Secretary of State's Corporation Division, to begin a business. Anybody can create a business, and to the extent they have income, they need to pay taxes on it, and they need to keep adequate records, etc. So if you have no, as you said, type of business entity, then you're going to be a sole proprietorship, or if you have a partner, then you're going to be a partnership. And if you have either of those, in the absence of filing, you are going to have personal liability. And then in the case of a partnership, you could actually have liability for actions that your partner had taken. Mm-hmm. So that is pretty compelling reason for most of us to do either a corporation or a limited liability company. Now, with a limited liability company or a corporation, there are other advantages, and one is the tax code. So for something that's incredibly capital intensive, like, I don't know, let's say you're going to build apartments in locations all around the United States, and you're going to keep a tremendous amount of money in the corporation, you're probably looking at a C corporation at that point for the most advantageous tax treatment, where you're keeping a lot of capital in and you're not planning on doing a lot of distributions. In contrast, if you had a limited liability company, or if you did the S election for your corporation, you have 50 or fewer shareholders, and your shareholders aren't other corporations, etc., you probably have the most advantageous tax advantages electing the S corporation status. The S is kind of like the best of both worlds. As long as you pay yourself a reasonable salary with an S corporation, you can also distribute to yourself a percentage of the profits to yourself without paying FICA taxes on them, the Social Security, Medicare withholdings, where every small businessman knows you pay not only the employer share, but the employee share out of your own pocket. And then there's one other important reason, I think, to have some sort of election besides protecting yourself from personal liability in the event of a lawsuit beyond the tax advantages that you can get from an S corporation or a C corporation, and that is branding. One of the problems with being Pirsch Legal Services is that it's all tied to my name, whereas even though you and Jeff are instrumental in No Coast Business Advisors, at some point No Coast Business Advisors is the name that's going to stand on the own, and when you're ready to sell your business, you are selling something other than yourself. Now, it's true that you could overcome that by filing for a trade name. So I could be a sole proprietor, and I could still file a trade name for No Coast Business Advisors, for example. But if you're going to go through that effort anyway, you might as well get the limited liability protection that comes with an LLC or a corporation.
Yep, and even if you file for a trade name, then you got to put the effort into building up that trade name for transitioning out. Whereas, like, with No Coast, everything we do, everything our brokers do, I think of me and Jeff as kind of the brain. We have the vision, we have the mission, and our people do it, and at some point, it won't need us to be the brain anymore, and then someone else can step in and take it over. A business is a tool. When the tool no longer serves a purpose, you need to get rid of it, and you should always plan for that. The second biggest question I see a lot is the majority of business owners and people thinking about getting into business have absolutely no idea what an operating agreement or a partnership agreement is and why they should have it. And you had touched on this earlier when you were talking about planning for the catastrophic worst case scenario. Why don't you go into a little more detail on that and explain exactly what an operating agreement is and why you should have it?
Okay. Well, an operating agreement is really an agreement that the members of a limited liability company would have. And so from a historical standpoint, they had limited partnerships and they had limited liability partnerships even. And you could even combine those. And so where you had partners, whether it was a limited liability partnership or a limited partnership or whatever, you would still want to set forward the expectations of the partners. An operating agreement is very similar. In the case of a corporation, from a historical standpoint, you had what's called a shareholders agreement, and then you would also have bylaws of the corporation, and then you would have the minutes of the shareholders meeting and of the directors meeting, where you'd be creating resolutions that would provide additional guidance for the officers of the corporation. But in my opinion, the limited liability company and the operating agreement is the easiest, although there's a lot of similarities between these documents. And I touched on some insofar as what you would want to protect against is, let's say you and I are partners and you're married and your wife is leaving you and your company is a success, our company is a success, and she wants to take half of your shares.
Of course my company's a success.
I might love you, but I don't want to be in business with your wife too. And so you would have provisions in that in the event of a divorce, she could be a placeholder maybe and be entitled to the revenue of the shares, but she would not be entitled to vote or participate in management, and there would be a formula to determine how she could be bought out equitably. Similarly, the partners could agree that they are going to put life insurance on each other. And so to the extent that I can't replace you without a huge nationwide search and spending a lot of money, and then I have to pay somebody because of your unique skill set, I want to make sure that in the operating agreement there's life insurance provisions. It could be just voluntary, With most small businesses starting out, when you have no revenue, there's nothing really to fight about.
Yep.
You want to have provisions in it that say, basically, what do we do if we can't agree? What do we do if somebody needs to buy somebody out? How do we value the shares, whether it's an outside appraisal, whether it's a formula based on revenue? So it's been my experience that the average operating agreement is about 20 to 25 pages long, and it says basically, you and I agree to do business under this company under these terms, and then obviously as well it says we're going to abide by the law, and in the event that we can't get along or in the event something happens to one of us, this is how we're going to continue.
So instead of having a big, long, drawn-out fight that usually can destroy a company, if you've worked it all out while you're on good terms and you've laid it all out in writing and everybody's agreed to it, then when the worst case happens, your business will live. Because it's kind of like a divorce, you know. If your goal is to hurt the other person and that's, you know, you're angry, they're angry, having it all laid out keeps that from affecting it.
Yeah, why people are fighting over a cow, it's just the lawyers milking the cow.
Mm-hmm.
I should say too, in the interest of full and fair disclosure, that in the absence of an operating agreement under the Nebraska Limited Liability Act, and all the states have adopted variations generally of model acts, but the law does have defaults for you. It's kind of like if you die without a will, mm-hmm. There will be a default for you under the law, an intestacy, but it may not be what you wanted.
Yep. And whenever you can control what happens, you should. So, a couple other ones. These are easy, so I'm going to lob them at you. How do you know your lawyer's doing a good job? If you're a business owner and you go in, like you have a small business attorney, how do you know your lawyer's doing a good job?
Well, there are some things that are more esoteric than others. There are some things that are obviously measurable. Mm-hmm. You know, you retain a lawyer to create an LLC for you, and he provides you paperwork that your LLC was created at the price that you negotiated. Mm-hmm. That's fairly cut and dry. To the extent that you retain a lawyer to create a demand letter for you and you obtain a settlement that you feel is fair, it may not be ideal, but you feel is fair, that seems fairly cut and dry. It gets a little bit more ethereal when you're like having your lawyer prepare your estate plan, and you're never going to know if your will's valid, right?
You just kind of hope for the best on that.
Right. I think whether it is a lawyer or an accountant or any other occupation, particularly the service occupations, but I guess it's probably true for selling widgets as well. Mm-hmm. The key to success, in my opinion, is to give people something of real value for their money, and also to have frank conversations with them and have honest expectations about what the law can and cannot do for them. I have wonderful clients, beautiful people that are sued for really stupid reasons. And it breaks my heart to have to ask them for retainers of real money. But unfortunately, I cannot subsist on nothing, and the people that I retain and assist me cannot subsist on nothing. And so bad things do happen to good people, but my advice for attorneys and other businessmen is, number one, have those tough conversations so that you have discussed realistic expectations going in. There are certain things that you can do, and any trial attorney with 20 years of experience will tell you he has lost cases he should have won and won cases he should have lost despite his best efforts, and that is a catalyst for why so many cases settle, because juries are a wild card, and sometimes even judges. And then the second thing, I think, is to really concentrate on giving people something of value for their money and communicating that too.
Okay, so be upfront with people, keep the communication going. And that pretty much answered the next question too, so I don't even got to hit you with that one.
Let me just hear it in case it.
What should you expect of your lawyer?
One of the catchphrases is zealous representation within the confines of the law. Lawyers are officers of the court. And television has given us a persona where it seems like people expect us to be advocates above and beyond the law. And that is something very, very difficult for me because I want to always do right by my clients and I want to be a zealous advocate for their behalf. But one of the ways that I protect my clients is by keeping them out of frivolous lawsuits, frivolous allegations, reminding them that I am subject to the rules of professional conduct, reminding them that even though what they tell me may be true, that the other side is going to have a different story, and that you have to understand that ultimately it goes to a decider of fact who is going to draw their own conclusions. And so even if what they are saying is true, if it seems less plausible than somebody else's explanation, they will not prevail. And so sometimes, and this is something Mr. Barry told me, you talk about mentors, Mr. Barry was a great mentor, really enjoyed working for him, but he told me once, Perry, if you can get a handshake and a smile, it's a better deal than all the money in the world.
Do you happen to agree with that?
Oh yeah. Yeah, I don't need to be rich.
You can be happy. That's what we're all working towards anyways. The retirement on the beach, the happy ending at the end, or in your case, retirement down in Mexico or Honduras or...
Yeah, but my retirement on the beach is going to be someplace where it's very inexpensive to live.
You and your boat?
Yeah, I don't need to have $60 million. I just need to be, content. That's the secret, maybe, to happiness.
Enough to subsist. All right, what's the biggest thing you'd want someone who's just starting out to know? You pick one thing, someone's getting into business. What do you think is the most important one piece of advice you could give them?
The question is not whether you will succeed or fail. You will fail. You will fail again. You will fail again. Just when everything is going great, somebody is going to come and kick the chair out from underneath you, and you're going to fail again. The people who you perceive today to be the greatest successes are people who, despite all of these failures, still somehow had the courage, the stamina, the wherewithal to continue to get up and to perform. And when you look into the history of some of these people that we admire so much, for me, the founding fathers, Jefferson blows me away. What an incredibly talented individual he was. And in fact, at one point, Kennedy met with all the Nobel Prize winners of that year in the White House. And he said, "This is the finest collection of minds ever assembled here since Jefferson dined alone." But if you read the private papers of Jefferson and some of the things that he did and said, you will, it will break your heart. Because he was not a perfect human being. He was a horribly flawed human being, just like the rest of us. And so again, it kind of goes back to admire people for those things that they excel at, and learn from them, but you're never going to have, with the exception of possibly for Christians of Jesus Christ, you are never going to have a perfect moral example. And in fact, that's what Jefferson said of Jesus Christ, that if he took out everything, he created his own Bible. Did you know that? And he took out everything that he thought was hocus pocus, and he kept in what's called today the Jeffersonian Bible. But he said what he was left with was an example of the most sublime set of morals that a human being had ever lived.
Nice.
I'm paraphrasing, probably. It's not an exact quote.
I'm going to quote you on that. All right. I want to thank everybody for watching. If you have questions I didn't ask, leave them on the comment section, YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook. I'll pass them on to him or he'll stock them. Perry, I want to thank you for coming on. You've been, I hope everybody gets some value out of it. I know I did. It's always a pleasure to talk to you.
Thank you, sir.
And we are going to leave you all to go. And hey, thanks for your time and check us out next time.